Welcome to the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Rivilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Rivilla London Suit and Shirt Makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. I talk to self-starters and creators about their journeys, the highs and lows, and the lessons they've learned along the way. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please help me out by leaving a rating and a review. Some people find rock bottom. My guest today found that rock bottom actually has a basement. From having it all in his 20s, beautiful girlfriend, high-paying job, sports car, and a six-pack, he ended up sitting on the edge of his bed contemplating suicide. Thankfully for him, us, and the rest of the world, he pulled himself back from the brink with a determination to overcome his anxiety, depression, and live the life he'd always dreamed of. Let's get forward to today, and he's the CFO, founder, and co-host of Next Level University, a global top 100 self-improvement podcast with more than 1,000 episodes. He coaches, speaks, and trains people all over the world, and he's here to share his story with lots of teachable moments to help us live better lives. Please join me in welcoming Kevin Palmieri to the Tailoring Talk Show. Kevin, how are you?
I'm doing well, Roberto. I appreciate the wonderful introduction. I'm excited to chat with you, and you are looking quite dapper this morning.
Oh, thank you. So
You're
this
very
is a
welcome.
recent change because usually I'm in podcasting mode when recording. So I'm, my rock and roll t-shirt, jeans, all that kind of stuff. But I've decided to try and be a little bit on brand now for recordings, especially as we're now videoing them as well. So
it's good.
If these
it's a
end
good
up
look.
on YouTube, yeah, thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
very welcome.
I really like yours because I can't pull the baseball cap off thing as well as you do.
I'm very much to what you said you're usually doing. I'm very much in the podcasting. It's a back to back kind of life that we're living. So dressing nice, it's just kind of a waste of clothes at this point. But yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Brilliant. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today. So you're all the way over in the US of A, in New Hampshire. How's your little part of the States doing at the moment?
So yeah, everything seems like it's going well. I got to be very honest. I do not go outside often. I go to the gym, I come home, and then you can kind of find me here. My wife and I will go out for a hike, or we'll go out apple picking or leaf peeping this time of the year. But for me, this is pretty much it. There's not a lot of me looking out the window.
Yeah. So you come across, like, you jumped on the call and straight away, like, you're this huge ball of energy. Obviously, it wasn't always that way. I'm so glad to see you being the happy, positive, vibrant person you are now. And you give so much through your podcast, through the website, through coaching, and so on. But if it's okay, if I can take you back to maybe first of all, kind of growing up, because you obviously have this very giving spirit about you. So it'd be really great to kind of get an idea of how you grew up and where that sort of came from. And then inevitably we are going to get into that decade of your life where you were kind of staring down the abyss. But take me back to kind of what Kevin was like, what young Kevin was like.
Yeah, young Kevin Roberto was an angry individual. So I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 27. Now, I think I had seen him when I was younger, but I was too young to understand the relationship. This is my father. I don't remember him. I didn't know his name, didn't know what he looked like, didn't know what he did for a living, didn't know where he was, if he was even alive. But I think that kind of manifested for me when I was younger as being angry. Like, why is everybody else so much different than me? Everybody I knew had really good families and they had houses and we always rented. And it was just a very interesting thing for me to look around and say, well, something's different here. Now, what I can say is, I think the reason I'm so giving and I try to be so generous with time or money or energy or effort or emotion is we never had a lot of money, but my mom was always a very generous person. She was just very generous. And I think that's where I got it from. I really, really think that's where I got it from. Now, again, going in the path of being different, I was a baseball player. I was a pretty good baseball player. I was a pretty good athlete. but I was a normal student, nothing special, nothing extraordinary. I wanted to play baseball for a living. That was my goal when I was younger. That eventually transitioned into I wanted to fight. I wanted to be a professional mixed martial arts fighter. And that led to me not going to college. So after high school, all my friends went away to college. And I said, you know what? I'm going to stay behind. I'm going to train mixed martial arts, see what happens. I'm pumping gas at a local gas station. That was my job for a few years. And that was really like, I don't remember a lot from my childhood. There were no super traumatic moments. There was none of that. For me, it just kind of went by. And then I've looked back and I've reflected, but the years that really, I think, made me into who I was that like 16 to 25, even before my rock bottom moments. An interesting thing happened. I was the type of person who would get a job, and then when I realized I didn't like the job, I would just quit without having another job lined up. I've done that so many times where I didn't realize that was a pattern until I reflected. But I think I've always wanted to, at a deep level, be my own boss, make my own schedule, and do what I'm doing. I just never believed it was possible. I never knew it was possible for someone like me, quote unquote. I don't have an entrepreneurial background. I didn't study business. I didn't study speaking. I never gave any presentations. So to your point, Roberto, I think one of the reasons I come off, and I appreciate that compliment so much, one of the reasons I come off as a positive energy is I often don't belong or feel like I belong where I am. It's like, how did I get so lucky to be able to do what I'm doing? I try to show up and work for it every day, but some days it gets a little weird, you know?
Yeah. You could say it's unfortunate the way that you grew up. But I guess, kind of coming into sort of where you are today, you don't necessarily have in a room, and because sometimes I feel like that as well. Sometimes I'm in a number of different sort of groups now with people who are, serial entrepreneurs and so on, and they seem to just have had their stuff together their entire lives. And I feel like I'm the dumbest person in the room. But then at the same time, it's like, we're street smart. We've got a different set of skills that those people don't have because they've never had to fight for things, right?
And the self-awareness. That's the thing for me is I realized, and I don't know where it came from, but I realized that the more I know myself, the better I'll be at everything else. And, there's a lot of people who are really good at certain things, but they don't know themselves at a deep level. It's very hard to be successful without a successful level of self-awareness. And I would bet that even the fact that you just said, well, I often feel like I'm the dumbest in the room, that's just self-awareness or a limiting belief, depending on where it's coming from. But the fact that you're aware of the thoughts, at least now you can take actions in alignment with them.
Exactly. And I think being centered, being self-aware leads to being centered. And when you're centered, you take your fighting analogy. The best way to fight, defend yourself, and then attack is to actually be centered and grounded.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of react to things. And you can think on your feet and so on. So you went from pumping gas to you got into a career track that then led you to be quote unquote successful at a young age. You have it all. How do you go from there to then sitting on the edge of your bed just contemplating taking your own life?
So for a little more context, it's interesting. I went from pumping gas to I worked at a hospital cleaning bathrooms and floors overnight. I was a personal trainer. I was a truck driver. I was a forklift operator. I was many, many different things. So, but I kept quitting jobs. I just I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. I got this very unique opportunity where I also went to the fire academy. I wanted to be a firefighter as well.
Wow.
So I had just graduated the fire academy, and I realized pretty quickly, if I'm going to become a firefighter, that's going to take like years and years and years, because there's just a long list of people, honestly, who are just more qualified than I am. So my girlfriend at the time, her aunt worked at kind of like a job fair. And my girlfriend said to me, hey, my aunt's doing this event. You should go check it out. And I said, all right, I don't know what I want to do for a living, so I might as well give this a shot. So I go to this class, and it's basically a class for people who don't necessarily have the opportunity to find a job. It's for people who might be stuck in between or they're struggling financially. And the thought is, we will find you somebody who's aligned as an employer. And for me, I didn't have a job, so that worked for me. So I go to this class and they said, okay, you're going to be taking the weatherization class. And I said, cool, what is that? And they said, well, a weatherization person makes houses more energy efficient. And I said, okay, cool. What does that mean? And they said, they work in attics, they work on windows, they work on doors, they use this cool spray foam and all this stuff. And I said, all right, cool. I like working with my hands. I'm in. So I learned for 2 weeks at this class and we get to the end of it. And I think this is the positive attitude and the personality that helps. The last day I graduate, quote unquote, I go up to kind of do the debriefing with the young lady who was heading the department. And she said, Kev, we really like you. We love your energy. You're great. Like, you're just a pleasure to be around. I said, thank you. I appreciate that. And she said, we're going to connect you with this company. This is like the best company that we have connections with. And I said, all right, cool. She said, so here's the thing. You're going to be making anywhere from $50 to $100 an hour. The only catch is there's travel involved. And I was like, okay, what kind of travel? And she said, well, the office is in Boston, which is an hour away from where I lived, but they do a lot of work out of state. And I was like, but $50 an hour? And she said, yeah, because you get state rate. You're getting paid by the state. And I said, all right, I'll give it a shot. So I went and met my quote unquote future boss. And I remember I dressed up. I was looking very nice, not as nice as you, Roberto, but I was looking pretty good. And we go into this trailer with a bunch of materials. And my boss is like, hey, grab that tank and bring that over here. Grab that and bring it over here. And I was like, okay, this is a weird job interview. We get to the end of that. And he said, hey, I really like your personality. I think you're going to fit in really, really well at this company. We're going down to Delaware. We don't know when the start date is, but we're going down to Delaware. That's going to be our first job. And do you want to do it? And I said, yeah, I'm in. So I waited a couple of weeks. I got a call from my boss and I proceeded to pack up a suitcase, go meet my boss who I had met one time, got in a car with him, drove 8 hours from Massachusetts to Delaware. I moved into a house with 7 people I had never met. And then I proceeded to do a job that I'd never done before. I'll never forget when I got my first paycheck. I mean, I was making $50 an hour. I'll never forget when I got my first paycheck. I said, I am in for life. I am in for life. I will do whatever it takes to keep this job. So if you fast forward 3 or 4 years, I had a beautiful girlfriend. She was a model. I had just won a bodybuilding show that I competed in. High paying job, sports car, new apartment. By all outside standards, I look very, very, very successful, very happy, and very fulfilled. But the truth is, I wasn't. I hadn't done any of the internal work. None of it. I was insecure. I was scared. I was scarce. I was depressed. I was anxious. One day, my girlfriend came to me and said, hey, this relationship isn't serving me anymore. I'm going to go chase my dreams. And that was my initial rock bottom of what just happened here. I thought I had it all. Now I feel like I have nothing. When she left, I did a lot of introspection. And I remember asking myself, like, who could possibly love this version of Kevin? Unfortunately, I didn't do any more inner work. I said, you know what? This is what has to happen. I got to make more money. That's what has to happen. I got to make more money. And then all this is going to go away. So I said, this next year, I'm going to make the most money I've ever made. And I will do whatever it takes within alignment to make that money. So the next year starts, I get a promotion and I'm a foreman now. And being a foreman means I start the job and I finish the job. So I'm getting more hours than anybody else on that job. Only problem is all of our jobs are out of state. So if you fast forward to the end of that year, I had been on the road for 10 months out of the 12 months. Every single week, I was staying in crappy hotels, working in different counties, working different shifts, going to different gyms, but I didn't care because it was in alignment with what I wanted. So I had my final pay stub of the year. I was standing at my kitchen table and I was standing there because my girlfriend took the chairs. My ex-girlfriend, they were her chairs. I wasn't home, so I didn't buy new ones. Didn't matter. And I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. But I had another one of those moments where I thought to myself, okay, I should be happier than I am, but I'm still miserable. Why? I don't understand why that is. And I dug in on that. I kept digging in on that. And I realized that for most of my life, I'd lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. That was where this all started. Now, the problem is, you're a podcaster, it's very hard to grow a podcast if you're not all in and if you're not putting effort toward it. And never mind when you're trying to travel and you're working different shifts. So almost overnight, Roberto, I fell out of love with my job, in love with podcasting. I start calling out of work. I start showing up late. I start leaving the job site early. And eventually it got to the point where I was just so burnt out. I was burning the candle on all ends. I was staying up for days on end routinely. Like that was pretty common. And I was in New Jersey getting ready to work a job. My alarm went off at 5:15 in the morning. I woke up, slid to the edge of the bed, was lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it is there was 10 televisions on in my head and every single one was on a different station. Yeah. One saying you're stuck here forever. You're never going to make $100,000. You never should have made it in the first place. If you do leave, what will your friends think? If you do leave, what will your family think? And if you do leave, do you really think you're going to ride this podcast train off into the sunset? That's most likely not going to happen for you. And in that moment, I felt like if I was to take my life, I would take my problems with me. Now, I'm very blessed that I have a wonderful community around me. I'm the most blessed when it comes to that. I texted my now business partner, who was just a friend and a mentor, and I explained the situation. I told him how I was feeling. And he said, Kev, in his wisdom, so much has changed for you in terms of awareness over the last few years, but your environments have stayed the same. I think it's time for you to change your environments. So 3 or 4 months later, I left my job and I began the journey of a very, very broke entrepreneur. And transparently, Roberto, the next 3 years were the hardest years of my life. Yeah, that sitting on the edge of the bed, that was a very challenging moment. But the next 3 years were the most brutal experience I can imagine for myself. It was such a challenge starting a business from nothing, $35,000 in credit card debt. That kind of stuff is just, that was a real challenge for sure.
Yeah. And also, I mean, all of that, you're suddenly going and embarking on this journey of huge change. And you're breaking so many things that then need putting back together in maybe a different way so that then you can move forward. But it's that period of change that can be so difficult. You literally you must have felt like you were in the eye of a storm, in the eye of a tornado. You could see everything flying around you, but it's just very hard to fix things down. I know that because I'm going through it at the moment.
A lot of it was identity for me. When I worked not every day, but I had a job pretty much from 16 to 26. I was always working a job. Yeah. So it was weird. Like I just what do I do? Just wake up whenever I want. Like, what am I supposed to do? And honestly, part of it for me was the identity of I'm a podcaster who has, I don't know, at that point, I probably only had like 50 episodes or something. So here I am saying, well, I'm a podcaster now. Like, well, I'm not making any money. I've never interviewed like any huge guests. So I felt a lot like an imposter at that point. That part of the identity was really, I went from having enough money to do whatever I wanted within reason to having no money and not being able to do anything I wanted really. It was a big shift in a very short amount of time.
Wow. I love how you describe only having 50 episodes at that point and then feeling imposter syndrome and not being successful, because I think I'm just about to clip 60. So,
well, I think it's important.
Beginning,
yeah, I think it's important. It's okay to. I didn't feel like a confident podcaster until we were 150 episodes in.
Yeah,
150.
I think validation from your peers is really important. So I always try and get feedback from my guests. Very often they'll give it without me asking, which is great because it means I'm hopefully doing things right. But that kind of validation is quite important, especially when you're just starting out. If there's anyone listening to this that's thinking about getting into podcasting, or you're quite early on in your podcasting career, or even if you're a bit further along and you feel like you're not getting any traction, I think that's really important. You need to constantly find ways from your community, your audience, to generate the energy you need to keep going. And also what Kevin said a few minutes ago, which is you also have to show up.
Yeah.
It's not something you put one episode out and then you don't record for weeks and weeks and weeks, and then you put another one out and so on. You're not going to get any traction that way.
No.
But you've gone on, you persevered, and you've gone on to create Next Level University, which is phenomenally successful. I mean, to be in the top, what did I say? It was in the top 1%.
All things considered, we're probably in like the top 0.5%, maybe not for listens, but if you were to do like listens and money, I would say we're probably in the top 0.5%.
Which is absolutely huge. I mean, I've just broken top 10% apparently, which was quite a nice surprise. But I mean, that's nothing in the grand scheme of things when you look at the actual numbers. So top 0.5% is like, wow, I bow down, I take my hat off to you if I had one. You're awesome. But again, it's so take me. Why don't you take me through Next Level University? So
Sure.
what's it all about? Obviously, you've touched on a little bit where that kind of came from, the audience that you're serving, and who you're really, really trying to get to, and who you're really trying to help.
Yeah. So Next Level University is not only the name of our podcast. So we do 7 episodes a week, and our jam is holistic self-improvement for dream chasers. That's really what we do. Heart driven, but no BS. So I want to come across as I care so deeply about everybody I'm serving, but I care deeply enough to give you the truth and not lie to you and try not to sugarcoat it, but also not to give it to you with ego. So yes, it's the name of our podcast, but our business is multifaceted, where we realize pretty quickly that if we can find a way to serve clients that struggled with the same things we struggled with as a podcast and a business, we could build a successful business that was impacting a lot of people, but also a win-win in terms of profitability. So yeah, we have a social media team and a website team and a podcast team, and we do retreats and coaching and group coaching and live events. So we have many things that we do. But the one thing, the through line of our business is always impact. So while other businesses might say, we're going to charge X amount for this no matter what, we literally reverse engineer what can our audience afford. That's why we do free podcasts and free virtual events, and we have free courses or a free course, because I understand not everybody can afford whatever it is for a coach or to fly out to a retreat. It's just not sustainable. So that's one of our big things is I want it to be sustainable, and I want it to be a win-win. It has to be a win-win. If it's not a win-win, it's a loss. Our clientele, our listeners are predominantly female. Never expected that. That wasn't what I set out in terms of the intentions, but we did a meetup last night. I think there was 23 people there. And Alan, my co-host, and I and myself were the only 2 males in the room. So that's the audience that we have attracted, and I'm so grateful for it. And our goal is really to help them feel heard, to help them feel supported, and to give them the awareness that they need to take new actions and the tactics to help them take the new actions to get new results. That's really us in a nutshell.
Have you been able to put your finger on why you've suddenly just hit that female demographic and why the males haven't shown up?
I think it's a couple reasons, and this is deep, but number one, Alan and I have a core. So Alan's the co-host, co-founder, CEO. We have a core common wound of low self-worth. We have dealt with low self-worth in the past. Most of our audience has dealt with low self-worth as well. I think that's a part of it. But I think that we are a very, very healthy balance of masculine, but not with a ton of ego. Yeah. I think that women in the feminine side really enjoy that because you actually can feel safe, but you also feel like maybe you're getting something that you need. Maybe you're getting very logical stuff versus more emotional stuff. I'm more emotional than Alan for sure, but we balance out each other very, very nicely. That's part of it. I think the other part of it is we're vulnerable. I mean, I don't want somebody to look at me and think I have it all figured out, because I can't help somebody if you don't relate to me. So I try to think of it, Roberto, as there's students, there's teachers, and there's guides. I don't really want to be a teacher. I'd rather be somebody who can guide you in terms of saying, look, I'm actually dealing with what you're dealing with right now, just in my own unique way. It's just different. It doesn't mean I'm above what you're going through. It doesn't mean I've mastered what you're going through. Maybe I've just learned more from going through it. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, I would say.
Yeah, because there are speakers, coaches, and so on out there who have this persona. I don't think I need to name any names. I think, a lot of people will probably know who I'm thinking about. And the way that they come across is that they have struggle shouldn't be a thing in life. And I know that struggle shouldn't necessarily be a thing that you have to go through in order to become successful. I mean, God, if I could wave a magic wand, I wouldn't wish, half the stuff that you or I have been through in our lives on anybody else.
Yeah.
Possibly my worst enemy. But there's a unrelated, there's something that sometimes you just can't relate to with people who are like that. Take the gym, for example. Okay, so you have a personal trainer who stands there and tells you to do things. They tell you to pick up those 20-kilo dumbbells and then do, 20 times 4 sets of lateral raises or whatever. Obviously have no idea what I'm talking about because I'm a road cyclist. And you kind of do it, but you do it begrudgingly. And then you don't want to go back or do a personal training session with that person, like, ever again. As opposed to the trainer who tells you to pick up those 20-kilo dumbbells or whatever, but they get right next to you on the bench next door and they do exactly the same thing. And then they see how you're doing and then they adjust themselves according to your needs. And you can think about personal improvement, self-improvement, all of that sort of thing, all the stuff that you guys do in the same kind of way. If you've got someone who's just kind of standing above you, who's like, I know everything, I'm super successful, your problems are your own, you need to just fight through those and, blah, 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 just push through. It can be really difficult for someone who is really either going through something that's very, very difficult at this point in time, or someone who's come through a lifetime of not being listened to, of not being made to feel their self-worth, and so on. So having someone that kind of gets down, like rolls up their sleeves and kind of gets down on their knees with you and just helps and takes you through that journey is just so huge. And obviously you've got the multifacets because you've got your public speaking, you've got the coaching, and then obviously the podcast is something that we can all carry with us every single day to be spending time with you guys, which is so great. Sorry, I regularly go off on tangents and get locked in my own little world on this show.
Can I just add to that, Roberto? Do you mind?
Of course, please.
I think of it from this perspective. Some of the worst advice I've ever heard, and I'll unpack it, is just don't care what people think. I love that. That's valuable. It's valuable social media advice. Just don't care what people think. Tell me how, though. Yeah. And wait, hold on. Also, tell me, why do I care what people think? And give me an example of how somebody you have helped no longer cares what people think. A lot of what we're learning is it's just, this is the tactic. Go do it. Just go do this. When most human beings are emotionally driven, they need to understand their identity level change first. That is really where I think a lot of people are getting stuck, is just because you've made $500 million building your business or whatever it is, doesn't mean you can give me fitness advice or relationship advice. Show me that you have those results. Just because you are more successful does not mean you're more aware. That's an interesting thing where I think a lot of people are getting the wool pulled over their eyes. And one of the reasons, transparently, we don't have guests on our show anymore is because a lot of people we were let down by. When you got behind the scenes with certain people, it was like, oh no, you're kind of playing a part. You're kind of playing a part. And I've done so much research since then into this industry. And there's a lot of people who, they buy their followers and they buy their likes and they buy their listens. And it's very clear that they're not doing it for the same reason. Now, you do you, that's on them. But yeah, I think it's the capability of helping somebody is really, really dependent on your own level of awareness on how you help yourself. And if you don't have that awareness, it's very hard to help somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And if you get found out, I remember I was with a client once, some of my clients are really well-to-do, they're on global boards and all this kind of stuff. So their lives are so far removed from my own experiences. I live in service to some of these people. But my background is very much, I remember when my sister was born, my dad kept us, he was running 3 jobs, and he basically, told my mom, You're not to stay in the hospital as long as you can because I can't afford to feed all of you. It was that kind of thing. So anyway, so I was with a client and his wife, and they were talking about a friend of theirs who's very famous over here, and she goes on morning television and she gives relationship advice, but her own life is an absolute car crash.
Yeah.
So when the veil goes up, all the credibility is completely gone. And it's kind of like, well, who the hell are you to show up and tell me how to do X, Y, and Z in my life when you haven't even got your own stuff together?
Yeah.
And that is something that is very prevalent, especially I think nowadays, where with social media, YouTube, etc. You know, the fact that you can start a podcast from pretty much nothing. You know, you can create the air of celebrity in inverted commas, quote unquote, very, very easily.
Yeah.
But finding people who are putting themselves out there who are truly genuine is, I think sadly they're kind of more in the minority, which is kind of why what you speak to is so important, especially for the communities like the one that you've suddenly found yourself surrounded by and now serving. I really, really wanted to ask you about purpose, because this is another thing that, you know, coaches always talk to you about. You know, you need to find your purpose, you need to know where you want to go in life and so on. And, you know, most people haven't got that worked out. We're just trying to sort of survive day to day. How do you kind of approach that subject with someone, and how do you kind of, or how do you take them on a journey to kind of realizing and sort of where they want to go and what they want to sort of do and achieve?
It's usually, I ask a lot of questions. That's the way I learn, and that's the way I coach in a nutshell. But so one of the questions I might ask is, tell me about the worst period of your life. And then just see what happens. See what comes up. Okay, tell me about that experience a little bit more. Okay, what were you feeling in that experience? Okay. I believe at a deep level, Roberto, for most people, their purpose has already happened. I don't necessarily know that we have to go out and search. Like, is this it? Is this it? Is this it? Is this it? One of our mentors, Evan Carmichael, said, and this is one of his things, your purpose comes from your deepest pain. I believe that. I really, really believe in some way, shape, or form, your purpose comes from your deepest pain. But many of us run from that pain. So we never actually connect with, what did I struggle with that I could help other people avoid in the future? What I think gets messy is the purpose is what you want to deliver to the world. The vehicle is how you do it. I think people get hung up on the vehicle. And here's why. So actually, a couple questions you can ask yourself. What makes you unreasonably angry? When you go to the beach and there's litter, it literally makes you want to cry. Okay, there's an opportunity that might be part of your purpose. You see children that aren't taken care of, and it really, really it wrecks your day, it wrecks your week. Maybe that's part of your purpose. Same with animals, the environment, whatever it may be, right? Whatever it may be. So when things get a little challenging is when you say, you know what? If I was capable, I would clean up every beach in the world and there would never be another piece of litter on any beach. But I could never make a living doing that. There's no way. How would I do that? I don't believe that that's possible. I think that's where people get hung up. I think more people realize what they want their purpose to actually be than is talked about. I think the issue comes when it's finding a vehicle. We have right now, I think we have 15 people on our team that works with NLU. It's not a coincidence that when people come join our team, they start podcasts. That's not a coincidence. They already know what they want to talk about. I didn't help them figure out what they want to talk about. They actually see a potential sustainable vehicle, which they might not have seen before, because I can actually show you how to do it. I really, really think your purpose has probably already happened. It's either the deepest pain, it's the deepest responsibility, it was the biggest challenge, it's the impact you want to have on the world. But you have to ask yourself, what is the vehicle for that? And I think the biggest challenge is lack of belief. If you don't believe it is humanly possible, if you don't believe it's possible for you, and you don't believe it's worth it, you're not going to take a shot. Why would you try to do something that you don't believe you can do? That, I think, is why many people don't actually connect their purpose to a vehicle because there's a lack of belief in between.
Yeah. And purpose can be many things. It doesn't necessarily have to be just one thing, because whilst you were describing that just now, I was thinking of multiple things that I'm passionate about, multiple things that make me cry day to day in life that I'm passionate about, and multiple things that I'm working on right now on delivering through the many different vehicles that we have at our disposal, podcasting being one of them, which, it's really funny because when I first started podcasting, it was more because I wanted to try and find another way to connect with customers that I just couldn't connect with during the pandemic. And also my business was shut, so I had nothing else to do. And I love listening to podcasts, so I was like, why not give it a go one day? But then I suddenly realized, sort of about 10 episodes in, I was like, actually, do you know what? I'm actually helping people here, which is why I got into the business that I'm in, because I love taking care of and I love helping people. But now, reaching out all over the world. So I'm going off on a tangent again. I get to meet all these amazing people like you. I'm sure you found the same thing. And my network is growing and I'm connecting with more people who are able to help me to help people in more ways than just what I can on my own.
Yeah.
Which is kind of awesome.
That's the best.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I'm kind of working out what my purpose is, but I have realized, particularly over the last year or so, that it isn't just one thing. It's not just, because people ask that question and you're sort of like, oh my God, okay, what's it? There's one right answer here. What is it? And it isn't that way at all, as you quite rightly said.
I think it's more of a flashlight beam versus a magnifying glass when you're starting a fire with a leaf. I think it's more, it doesn't have to be like ultra specific. For me, maybe it's bringing holistic self-improvement to the masses, but it's when I'm not podcasting or speaking or coaching and I'm just in the grocery store, I'm not giving seminars on self-improvement. I might just want to make sure every experience I have with somebody is a positive one. I had that moment. We have like a water, one of those like office water coolers in our kitchen. That way we always have fresh water. And I went to Lowe's the other day and I got a couple big 5-gallon jugs. And I have a good relationship with the guy there that works in the morning. And when I left, I said, hey, man, all the love. I hope you have a wonderful day. And when I left, I was like, I wonder what he felt when I said all the love, because I wonder how many people say to him all the love before they walk out of there. And I thought to myself, but that's me. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to make sure that every interaction, and obviously I miss and I have days, but every interaction is more positive when I leave than when I started. But I think that's the root of my purpose. I really think that's what it is to raise the vibration of the room if I can. And I can't always, right? I can't always, but that's what I'm trying to do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a hugger. So
Same.
I end up just hugging everybody almost that I meet. Obviously, I'm also very sensitive to other people's feelings. So if I kind of, but if I can break a barrier, I will through hugging. COVID was especially difficult for me because of that, for obvious reasons. But yeah, anyway. So anyone who's listening obviously there's the Next Level University podcast, but if anyone wants to kind of get sort of deeper into this, what's the best route? Because you do in person, you guys, right? But you also do remote, online.
Yep.
You obviously you're giving talks all the time. But if someone's listening to this right now, what would you say is the best way for them to start to kind of explore working with you?
Yeah, I would say we have a free course on the website, and a lot of people, when they're trying to do a free course, they're like, what is the easiest thing I can do to give away to people? Yeah. For us, we literally sat in the studio for, I don't know if it was 10 hours, 12 hours, and we recorded an hour and a half on this camera in our custom studio on what we think will help the people the most. And we just said, you know what? I wanted to charge for it. Alan was like, we should give it away for free. And I was like, all right, we can give it away for free. Let's just do that. So that's a good place to start. I think it's called What It Takes to Get to the Next Level. It's on our website. It's totally free. That's what I would say for people. And here's the reason. I don't want you to give me money unless you actually believe that we can help you. I want to make sure it's a win-win. I don't want your money unless it's a win-win for both of us. So it's free, very little obligation. You can download it. There's worksheets. You can take it at your own rate. That's what I would say. That's probably other than listening to the podcast, that's the next best step.
Yeah, because you have to want to do it. You have to be willing to submit and ready to kind of change and so on. And obviously, if you've got a coach like you and your team who are willing and ready, then I guess that that course, and you're right, it is the what it takes to get to the next level course is a great way to basically kind of just have that taster and then decide if you kind of want to take it further, right?
Yeah, there's a place for everybody in our business, and 50% of our business is completely free. So maybe you're not ready to exchange money for self-improvement. No worries. Maybe you'll never will be. No worries. But you can listen to the podcast every day, and if that's for you, that's what's for you. So it's always about what's best for the audience. We reverse engineer every episode on what will be the most valuable piece of content for this audience. And we record all of our episodes. None of them are repurposed. It's all Alan and I in front of these microphones, giving it everything we got every day. So
I dared to say to some of my customers, because they were like, how's the podcast going? Some of them find it amusing. Some of them don't understand how I have the time to do my day job but I remember you just talking about that, where you were kind of, sort of early on where you almost hit crisis. That you were kind of working late into night and working all the hours. It's because you were doing your side hustle, the podcasts in the evenings, and you were editing late into the night and all the rest of it. I know exactly what that's like. And I can't remember where the hell I was going there, but anyway, to bring it back to the point, all of you people listening, so like Kevin said, you have the podcast. I will have the links in the show notes as well. Something, these are questions that you might have asked yourself. When is the last time that you truly felt on purpose? If you feel like you've been drifting, particularly lately with everything that's going on in the world, when was the last time that you felt absolutely clear about what you wanted? When have you felt 100% committed to your goals? When have you felt truly confident? When have you felt the most consistent and aligned? When is the last time you had a supportive community that were there to be your biggest cheerleaders when things were going great, and there to pick you up when things maybe weren't going so great? So it's definitely worth having a look at the What It Takes to Get to the Next Level course. Kevin and his team, in that course, they show you step by step, completely free. You don't have to invest a cent, a dime, a penny, what you can do to get to the next level. As Kevin said, they specifically sat down and put the hours in to create this course for people like you. So you can go check it out. The link is too long, so I'm going to put it in the show notes for everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem at all. Kevin, any other resources, anything else that you want to tell everybody about today?
I would just end with a quote. The biggest difference between who you are today and who you want to be is your habits. I mean, what you're doing today is going to bring you results a year, 5, 10 years down the road, whether it's positive or negative. It's smoking a cigarette today might not seem like that big of a deal, might not be a big deal, or it could be terrible in 10 years. You tracking your finances might seem pretty inconsequential today, but if you start doing that, who knows where you'll be 10 years from today. So yeah, make sure you treat the days as importantly as they actually are.
Yeah. It's the power of compounding. As my last guest, we had a finance episode, but it translates to life as well, if you just so beautifully and eloquently put it. Kevin, thank you so much. Have you had fun today?
I have. I've had a blast. This was truly wonderful. I appreciate your thoughtfulness with your questions. I appreciate the flow of conversation, and I would definitely come back on and whenever you'd like, and have this conversation with you as often as possible.
I would absolutely love to. Thank you so much. As I say, I'm just feel so privileged to have had you on my show today. So thank you so much, Kevin.
My pleasure.
Thank you all so much for joining Kevin and I on this episode. Don't forget that Tailoring Talk is now on Instagram at Tailoring Talk Podcast, and I love feedback, so you can email the show directly at tailoringtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review. Remember to check out Kevin's podcast. That will be in the show notes as well. You can also click the share button in your player to send the show on to people you know. If you're enjoying Tailoring Talk and feel compelled to throw some change our way and support the show, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Roberto Rivella. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you, Kevin.
My pleasure, my friend. It was wonderful.
I love your little studio with the kind of background and so on. But that's where you live, like 80% of the time.
Yeah, this week has been, I don't even know, it'll probably be like 90 hours this week. It's been a week. It's been a busy week this week. Things have really started to ramp up, which I'm grateful for. I'm very grateful for. But it's definitely humbling. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to keep up with, and this is one of my favorite quotes. Don't forget how bad you wanted it before you had it all. You got to keep going. You got to keep going if you want it.